how to create a graph using Google Sheets. It's a surprisingly difficult part about progress monitoring for a lot of people is just how to enter the data onto a spreadsheet so that it will make the kinds of graphs that you saw in my book and that are typically used. So I'm going to actually create two videos so that they won't be quite so long. So this is what it's all about. There are these objectives. I'm not going to talk about why we need to make graphs and why that's beneficial and why we use line graphs. That's all in the book. So hopefully you've got that. In this particular video, we're going to talk about baseline and intervention and also the aim line. And then we'll make the spreadsheet. And then I'll make another video that will have all of the information that you need about how to actually create the graph from the spreadsheet. So here we go. I have screenshots throughout here. So when we chart progress monitoring, we start with looking at the baseline, and that is just where the student starts. So before we implement any intervention, we want to know where our students are, because that's how we can tell if what we've done has made any difference for them. So in terms of creating your graph, first of all, it's really important that you set it up in this way so that you get the right X and Y axis. You want to have the first row be your titles. So I've got session, but this could be week or date, depending on how you pick to put that in there. I've got a column for baseline, a column that will be my aim line, a column for my first intervention, and a column for my second intervention. So what you see here is the sessions are listed down this way. I labeled my sessions where I was taking baseline data as A, B, C, and D, because that's not really week by week. Maybe I took all of my baseline data in oral reading fluency in one day. Or maybe you had 4 consecutive days that you took baseline data on math fluency or on independence in something. So I just labeled them that way. And then I went on to label sessions of intervention 1 through 10 over here. So in my example, and all of this is fictional data, I have got just baseline data, 53 words correct per minute, 55, 56, 54. So that's what I'm going to call my baseline. And that is the first step in creating your graph. And notice that we've got this row, or column, sorry, this column is all about sessions. This column is the baseline, and it stops right here because that's all the baseline data that we've got. So once we've established our baseline and we've made sure that it's pretty stable so that it's giving us a good approximation of where the kid is, we want to think about what the aim line will be. And the book had a lot of suggestions about how to find your specific aim line. It's really hard in functional areas, easier in academic areas. The book has some charts that you can use. But the aim line is that line that we're showing in the graph, so that we can tell whether we're on target. Are we heading in the direction of where we need the child's performance to be at the end of the term? Or are we going so slowly that we're never going to get to our end point, to our goal? So we want to, based on our baseline, determine an ambitious but still achievable goal. So let's say that the student, this fictional data that I have with baseline oral reading fluency around 55, let's say that we want them by the end of the school year to read 120 words per minute, and we only have 30 weeks left. It might be hard to achieve. Maybe we could do it in 30, but we can't do it in 20 weeks. So we have to think, how much time do we have, and is it even reasonable to believe we can get to a particular point? And that is, I'm not going to talk much more about that in this particular video, but if people want to talk about that, we certainly can. And then we want to plot that aim line on our graph. So my next slide is a chart, and there's a chart similar to this in the book. And this chart is just showing by grade level different research established rates of growth for reading, oral reading fluency. So how many words per week can we expect children to learn? And in the case of the second grader, it's the example we're kind of going to follow in creating this graph. It's realistic to think that a second grader can get about 1.5 words per week. It's ambitious to say 2, and ambitious might be a bit hard. On the other hand, in special education, they're getting not even 1 whole word improvement per week. So we want to choose a growth rate that feels appropriate for our kids. In the next slide, so here's an example of how to find this information. We've got the baseline, and in that example, the data set that I showed you, we've got a second grade student whose baseline is 55 words correct per minute. The weekly increase then from the slide before is 1.5 words per week. We have 25 weeks left of school. And it's just math. Sorry, but it's math. We have 25 weeks times 1.5 words means that we can expect over the 25 weeks left of school 38 words per minute of gain over 25 weeks. 38 words plus 55 at the baseline is we think by the end of the school year we can get this child, the second grader, up to 93 words correct per minute. It's probably a little low. Probably a second grader needs to be reading more like 110, but that is a significant gain over that period of time. So, coming back to the idea of creating our graph, when I create my aim line, I'm going to put it in its own column, and I don't want to put those data in the same column as the baseline because I want those to be separate lines so that they'll break. And when I show you how to create the graph, you'll understand much better why my graph has these funny breaks in the columns. So if the baseline was 55 and I want to add 1.5 words per week in this first week of intervention, that's 56.5. And we could just keep doing the math and adding, but I'm lazy. So what I would do instead is use the formula. It's equal sum C6, so that's C6. So that the computer is pulling this 56.5 and adding 1.5. And so when I hit return in this box, it'll give me 58. If I then copy that box and paste it in all the boxes all the way down the column, it will continue to add 1.5, and that is exactly how I created this column. 56.5, 58, 59.5, 61. That's how I got my aim line. It's just a tricky little math thing. So this is not the page I want to be on. So we're going to go next to intervention phases. And when we're talking about intervention, we are just talking about now that we know that this is where the kid is, we're going to implement some kind of intervention. And we want to see if that intervention is working. So I break the line again. It's following, here is the first session of intervention, which is where our first time of looking at our aim of 56.5. And how did the child do? And in this case, the child did 56. The next week, 56, but we wanted 58. The next week, 57, but we wanted 59.5. So you can see already just by the numbers here that the child is starting to fall behind. When the child falls behind the aim line, that's when we need to change our intervention. We'll talk more about that in some other videos and in chapter 6. This is all chapter 5 material. But when that happens and we're clearly not meeting the aim line, we need to change the intervention because the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing when that thing is not working. Continuing to use the same intervention strategy when it's not getting them where they need to go, when it's not helping them meet the same line, is a bad idea. So here at week 7, we've decided we're going to change up our intervention. And so I break the line. So here I've got my aim line, Notice that the baseline and the intervention are not in the same sessions. When I get to intervention 2, I don't have data for weeks 6 through 7, or 1 through 7 here, because we weren't doing intervention 2 at that time. So I move over a column and I have intervention 2. And if I needed to, I could do intervention 3 and intervention 4 and intervention 5, whatever numbers. And I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to let you digest that, and I will create another video to continue on with how to get from that spreadsheet to actually creating the chart. And some of you probably already know how to do that and you won't need the next part. And that's why I'm going to take a little break here and start again. So come back.